Dear brothers and sisters, inshallah, today I'm going to talk about identity crisis in our children. This is one of the major issues, a crisis we are facing as a Muslim Ummah. Goals of my talk is to address the following questions. Importance of establishing a healthy identity in children and how can it impact resilience. Second question, what do the Quran and Sunnah teach us about identity? How can parents foster a strong Muslim identity in children? What role do I play as a parent in my child's identity development? What are concrete everyday actions I can take to help my child develop a strong Islamic core, confidence and identity as a Muslim? Last and final question, how can I navigate obstacles that may impact my child's ability to create a healthy identity? Of course, in one talk I cannot address all these questions. Inshallah, I would begin today a series of talk in which inshallah we will address all these questions. So my introduction today is the development and maintenance of a healthy identity is key to promoting emotional, mental, and spiritual resilience. Identity formation, my Muslim brothers and sisters, is usually associated with teens, youth age. It begins early in life and develops in stages. So, we must address this issue in children's early and developmental years. My Muslim brothers and sisters, children continuously explore questions about who they are and who they will become physically, relationally, socially, and emotionally. Children are and will face difficulties at every stage in their lives. We need to understand this concept and aspect. So, prioritizing their identity development is one of the greatest services we as a parents can provide to help our children. Psychological research has found that religious identity provides a sense of continuity across time and place and allows an individual to develop a sense of internal consistency despite the unavoidable changes that time brings to society, relationship, and self. Social standards are constantly, very important point, in flux. So if our children's sense of self stems solely from their surroundings, confusion is inevitable. In this situation, our goal is to help our children forge a durable identity through the stability offered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guidance and identity based on the truth of Islam. Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam said, no child is born but that he is upon the natural instinct. His parents make him a Jew or a Christian, a Magian. What is natural instinct, my Muslim brothers and sisters? Each of us born upon an innate disposition which is called fitrah in Arabic language. And what is that? To worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. But the fitrah will only blossom if we take active steps to preserve it. We must help our children to fulfill their natural hunger for meaning by finding it in their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Identity is a controversial concept and theorists have offered several competing definitions of identity. Many psychotherapists in our language, in Arabic we call doctors of ilmun nafs, understand identity as the way people see themselves, a unique combination of their beliefs, drives, values, and abilities, all of which come together to form an overall image of the self. In simple words, if I say identity is how you reconcile the various parts of yourself into a collective whole. My goal is to focus on the aspect of the self needed to build resilience, particularly for Muslim children. A large part of my focus includes the importance of action, my Muslim brothers. Islamic identity requires Islamic action. Identity formation is not a linear process. We need to understand this very well, but rather a continuous one that unfolds through our deliberate choices. Those choices both inform and are informed by our values. And so our choices slowly but surely shape a coherent sense of self. Our identity will necessarily fluctuate. Just as Iman, our faith increases and decreases, our Islamic identity is volatile to change as well. As we can see, the surroundings of our children, the environment, the social media, etc. Our roles are impacted by our identity, and our identity can also be affected by the roles we adopt in different stages of our life. A person who struggles to integrate different aspects of their identity into a consistent image of self can suffer from role confusion, number one, a weak sense of self, number two, and sometimes even mental illness. You can see the subtle interplay of identity, roles, and behaviors in these following examples. I'm going to share two examples with you. Number one, the sheltered Muslim teenager who moves away to college and becomes friends with his non-Muslim roommate. The teenager may have a good Islamic identity, which his friend respects. But sometimes seeing his friend engage in what appear to be fun but un-Islamic social behaviors makes him feel tempered and weak. This is a very important point to understand. The second example, my Muslim brothers and sisters, the loyal husband who moves his aging mother into his home, trying to balance his role as a husband and son in accordance with his Islamic identity, but finds it challenging when the two roles appear to be in competition due to different expectations of his mother and wife, very common in our cultural environment. So, a series of talks in which, inshallah, I will give suggestions to help nurture a stable Islamic identity for our children. Also, how your child approaches these various social roles such as student, friend, and athlete. Each of those roles and their associated actions may appear secular or non-religious, but what we do in those roles can be forms of worship. Even our family role as parent or professional roles as doctor, for instance, should build up and be built up by our Islamic identity. Our worldly activities do not fall outside of our Islamic identity. They are in fact part of it. An employee, a footy devotee, a hiker, are all these people as Muslim first and foremost. We need to think that we are Muslim first. We see this in example of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The beautiful hadith, the companion Hanzala radiyallahu ta'ala anhu said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's messenger, when we are in your company, he said to Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, O Prophet of Allah, when we are in your company, we are reminded of hellfire and paradise as if we are seeing them with our own eyes. But whenever we go away from you and attend to our wives, children, and businesses, these things go out of our minds. O Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thereupon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Prophet said, by him in whose hand is my life, if your state of mind remains the same as it is in my presence, and you are always busy in remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the angels would shake hands with you in your beds and in your paths. But Hanzala, there is a time for this and a time for that. So there is a time to remind you about hell. There is a time to remind you about paradise. So Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam answering the question of Hanzala regarding the state of our mind in different circumstances, in different places. Now, my Muslim brothers and sisters, I am presenting a model to address identity crisis in our youth. Stage 1, building resilience. It takes the form of a pyramid with the base being the most important and foundational, although all levels are essential and needed in building resilience from a psycho-spiritual perspective, from nafsiyati point of view. What is that model? Number 1 on top of that pyramid is character, coping, patience, distress, tolerance, and adaptability. What is the purpose of that model? Faith through action. Connection to self. What is connection to self? We will look into identity and self-esteem. Then the next thing is secure attachment. The importance of building an attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost, followed by attachment to parents. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Quran and the Ummah at large. After attachment, the next level in the pyramid is the significance of connection to oneself. Our Islamically integrated model asserts that the development of an identity with Islam as its foundation is essential in fostering mental, emotional, and spiritual health in Muslim children. A healthy Islamic identity, my Muslim brothers and sisters, allows children to build resilience in the face of daily challenges and provides a sense of stability. We will explore research finding as well as Islamic principles that will help us as parents with the guidance and will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise our children whose actions and ambitions ultimately rest on their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and their pursuit of paradise, Jannah, inshallah, bi-iznillahi ta'ala. Our parenting model is based on the beautiful ayah of Quran Majid in which Luqman, the wise gave his son profound advice. This ayah states, your parents pressure you to associate with me what you have no knowledge of. Do not obey them. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning the advice of Luqman to his son in the Quran. Still keep their company in this world courteously and follow the way of those who turn to me in devotion. So here we can find, we go back to the hadith of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that every child is born on his or her fitra, basic instinct. And I have explained to you what is that fitra. That in our fitra, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chipped in the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the duty of all the parents, to help their children to fulfill that need and that requirement in their child. That is our job, being a parent and mentor, to do that one. So, staying true to oneself and one's purpose of worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even in the face of pressure. So that hadith, I go back to explain further, it is up to the parents to make that child a Jew, a Christian, a Magian. So it is up to the parents. The environment you are providing to your child, that is your job, to provide that environment that they become the true believers, the true servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, and I did not create the jinn and mankind except to worship me. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. We should keep this ayah always in front of our eyes and reflect upon it. Helping our children to live in accordance with their purpose of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows them to face struggles with the resilience inherent in a solid Muslim identity.